friends for continuously listening to her acting screams and tears. Since the pandemic has started, she has produced, directed, and acted in a myriad of plays and monologues, which you can watch. We have a link inside the program that we sent you guys. Please go out and watch them. It's some amazing work. She is keeping a lot of people creative throughout this thing, and she is an amazing woman. So without further ado, Jackie, and zooming into theater.
Hi, everyone. And thank you so much, Marquita, for that introduction. I'm so excited to show you what is Zoom Theater. So I want this to be as interactive as possible. So after each little segment that I'll be doing, I'll be asking y'all questions as well. So the first thing that I thought about is, what is Zoom Theater, right? Like, what does that even mean? And in my opinion, it's this new genre that kind of lives between movies and theater, because we're not in person, right? And so it's not really theater, but it's not totally movie, because it's not like there's someone shooting a camera looking at you, but we can see your face up close. So it kind of lives between these two mediums. And you can either be very basic with Zoom Theater, or you could do a lot of special effects, just like with theater and with movies, right? You can do something simple or something way more complex. Why Zoom Theater? Well, as you know, there's a pandemic. And so there was this need to create, and I had already been using Zoom because as a teacher, I have taught people online for years, actually, and all over the world. And so Zoom was one of those platforms that we use with different companies. And it was a great way to really get to create still. And so what are some of the advantages of Zoom Theater? In my opinion, again, accessibility. So many people aren't able to get to a theater, to audition to things, to do things. And so accessibility is huge for me. And Zoom Theater definitely makes that happen. Convenience, no need to commute. Actors can come from all over the world. No need to, like, in terms of time, well, it's whenever you're available that you can do it. You can do it. You can rehearse, you can create. And I love that. And you can reach a much wider audience, frankly, than, in real theater. In real theater, you have the people who are around your city that can come. But think about your friends and family in other states, in other cities that are really far, in other parts of the world, or who can't afford to pay to watch theater. So that is another advantage. Can y'all think of any other advantages for Zoom Theater?
I know personally for me, it, like you said, it brings people from all different areas. It's a great form of like networking, people who you might have ever been able to act with before. It's like, oh, I know someone in California and I've never been to Cali a day in my life. And it opens up your world of who your networking possibilities are.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marquita. Any other thoughts of advantages
Yeah,
for?
sorry, I don't know if this was mentioned, if you
Mhm.
mentioned this or not, but like, I know of a few people who have like different physical limitations, so they can't
Mhm.
act on a stage, and this allows them for their
Absolutely.
acting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was
Jackie,
gonna.
oh, sorry, you go for it.
Oh, I was just gonna say. I love the idea of accessibility. I also think that accessibility, translates to the audience as well.
Mhm.
And so people who don't necessarily see themselves as theater goers, they may be more likely to tune into something on Zoom because it seems more accessible to the life that they live. They don't identify as a person who enjoys theater, but also people who, like, I work with a lot of seniors, and
Mhm.
They just may never be able to leave the home to get to the space. And so it really does make the audience, it just gives them a huge level of accessibility all around.
Mhm.
I think to add to that, it's also like people that have like anxiety and things like that, that they want to go, because you're talking about people that may not be, if they want to go, but they can't like handle the stress of that kind of environment because it's
Mhm.
too, or someone with like autism that isn't capable of being around that many people,
Right.
they're able to be a part of it, whether, and even on both sides of the spectrum. Like if some, depending on, them sitting in their own home environment and learning lines and saying that on a screen is going to be a lot easier for somebody who's like an autistic actor or something that really wants to be involved and is obsessed and can tell you every single line of every Broadway show ever done in the history of the universe. Because I know people like that, but they
Mhm.
can't handle all the lights and all the sensory overload that goes into being on stage or being in the audience. So it gives everybody a chance to, or someone that, I think of, like you said, everyone says like accessibility. I think of like Shakespeare and like Puck in Midsummer. Like
Right.
a lot of us can't physically play Puck. Like
Mhm.
it takes a really athletically inclined human being to play Puck.
Mhm.
But on Zoom, anybody can be Puck.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter. All you gotta do is do the face. That's it. Like that's all you're seeing pretty much. So it's, and I will say I live in Orlando and I went to school in DC. Haven't gotten to act with Celia in forever, Marquita in forever, and Zoom gave us the opportunity, to get to be in a show for TMD for a reading for them like in the fall. So that was just fun to get get back with your people. Do you know what I mean? And kind of like get to enjoy that again.
Absolutely.
I think that because of you're talking about access, and it's actually access across so many different, both for the audience, both the performers,
Mhm.
for whatever, but the material, because it's open to such a wide range, no matter, they're really, like if you're in Tokyo and it happens to be 4 a.m. there, but you can do it.
Yeah.
I mean, but you get material, plays, you can, like you, Jackie, you have, you've gotten almost everybody I know to either write something or perform something or write something that someone else performed, that before that would not have been really an option.
Mhm.
I mean, what theater is going to have, like my monologue? I mean, that doesn't happen. But with Zoom, you can do all types of material from all kinds of people that never would have had that opportunity before. So, in some ways, it's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to piggyback on that, I mean, I've produced a lot of original work, and that's something that has been, so rewarding to me. And I know that a lot of playwrights feel very happy about that because there is only so many theaters that exist, and a lot of them want to do stuff that will guarantee them money, and doing original work can be very, very difficult and risky financially. And so, but with Zoom Theater, we've been able to do all kinds of original work from playwrights from all over the world, and it's amazing. It's incredible. And a lot of the work is, I haven't seen one bad script yet, one bad play yet, but yeah.
There are also no bad seats, no like obstructed views behind the pole.
Exactly. that is one of the biggest things that I explain to people. I'm like, listen, I've gone to Broadway many a times, to the Kennedy Center, and I've been in the nosebleeds where I
Yes.
can see the costumes, but I can't see the faces. I can't tell what emotion is going.
Which, one other thing, it has taught a lot of us how to perform for camera
Yes.
versus for stage, which
Mhm.
is a very, and both for Zoom auditions and, self tapes, and how to transition from stage to screen, and how, the subtleties of that. And it's very good training for when we for going forward.
Absolutely.
It's also to continue that with the audience side of it. Like I live in Orlando. I'm from Pennsylvania. I
Mhm.
lived in DC for a long time. I've got kids that I've taught all over the halfway across the country that all perform and do different shows. Well, because of the pandemic and because they're doing stuff and not allowing big audiences, they're even using Zoom, like whether it's performing Zoom or just like putting it up to watch the show
Mhm.
through. I'm able to watch my kids. I don't have to travel 12 hours to go see my kids in Theory of Relativity. I don't have to travel. I can watch that. Then I can go watch, a friend of mine from DC in a show an hour later. I can literally like binge watch theater all day long, like live theater that's happening all over the world. You can just binge watch it. Which in the middle of a pandemic, when you've got people with mental health issues that are sad and miserable and lonely, theater brings people together. It always has. Art is the
Mhm.
one thing that like unites us. And the fact that it's accessible on that way and that Zoom has given us that platform to be able to do that, like that is huge. And it's been huge for so many people on so many different levels.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree with you.
I think something else that's been happening. Oh, sorry. Did you want to?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Something else that's been happening, which I think is really interesting, is that I've been able to engage in a lot of post-show discussions that,
Yeah.
I wouldn't normally, I've got to get to my car, my parking's about to expire,
Mhm.
Where in this case, I get to really stick around and talk to people, which I think is great.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Now, what are some of the disadvantages of Zoom theater? Again, always in my opinion, you can't touch people, which I know a lot of people miss with the pandemic, the act of, this physical intimacy, technological issues. This happens a lot as well. We take for granted that everyone has stable internet and such, and that's not always the case. And when it comes to technological issues, that means, sometimes you can't do backgrounds or space as well. You can't move around as much depending on the space that you're using, et cetera, et cetera. Are there some other disadvantages that y'all think?
So
Mhm.
I will try my favorite quote. Okay. My absolute favorite quote from Denzel Washington is when they asked him why he did theater
Mhm.
and film, he said that theater acting is like an artist that tours and film acting is like an artist in the studio making an album. You don't know what your art does to the masses until you're in the same room with them when you're creating. And that's the thing that is missing, because I don't care how close we are over the technology, the energy you feel as an actor on stage when you do something and it's funny and that audience roars at you, or you get up there and you bare your soul and that audience is shedding a tear for your character. There is nothing like that. That's the high for me. Like everyone says, they have their drug. That's the drug for me. Like that's the highs, chasing those emotional moments, chasing those like moments on stage. And we don't get those anymore. And that's the hard part. I think that's the hardest, the biggest drawback to where we're at now.
Got you. I would say yes. At the same time, I've been a part of groups that have let the audience keep their videos on and stay unmuted. And so I've actually done shows where I can see the people and the people are laughing on screen on Zoom. Now that could be an advantage or a disadvantage depending on who you are and how good your attention span is and everything. But yeah, there are groups that are doing that.
Yeah, I have to agree though. Is it Ashley? Yeah, there's theater requires an audience and performers to breathe the same air. I mean, that type of theater, it's just a necessary part of the art form. And yeah, so you can have a lot of advantages with the Zoom, that we've talked about, but there is nothing like you have to breathe the same air as your audience.
I think that both of these points that have been made, it's part of the reason why I keep asking myself, like, is Zoom theater? Like, I love all the pluses that we've had about it. And some theater artists are like, no, online is not theater, it's something else. Like what was discussed in the beginning is like, it's like this new medium. And I see both sides to it, like, oh, there's all these wonderful advantages, but is it really like theater light? Because like we'll never get that true in-person experience where I mean, like I've participated in a Zoom show where the audience was able to type in feedback, and that really did elevate the connectivity with the audience. But it was still, while I'm performing, I'm like looking at little chats about, people enjoying the show. And so that was distracting as an artist, but also it was the only thing that like gave us a connection to them. So it's like, is it really theater? Like, and maybe the answer doesn't matter, but I feel like I'm in the process of developing a show that's going to have a small in-person audience and a virtual YouTube streaming simultaneously. And like, is it really theater? Yeah, no, it's like this other thing. And that's okay. But like, does theater really, like, to be theater, does it require that in-person experience? And is everything else sort of like less than, but almost? And I don't know. I mean, just very interesting to be a part of the conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think not just Zoom theater, but even thinking of recorded theater, right? There are lots of plays that have been recorded for years and years and years all over that are filmed and shown to publics all over the world. And that also begs the question of, is that theater? Because we're not there with them, but we see them on the stage, right? And so, yeah, and I loved the fact that you even said, like, does it matter? I don't know if it matters, to be honest. That's a good question. I guess it depends on the individual. For me, it doesn't matter. I call it Zoom theater just because it's easy. It's easy to say Zoom theater, but does it matter if it's theater, film, in between? As long as I can create and I can share that with people, I think for me, that's the most important thing. So the
But
next
I think
thing,
for a lot of us, I think for a lot of us, that's the case. I think there's just like I said, I have really enjoyed getting to do things with people that I would never have met otherwise. That I like, when Marquita was like, hey, we're doing a reading. I have a part for you. Do you want to read? Do you want to do it? And I was like, heck yeah, I would. I didn't think since I moved south that I would ever, like, till I moved back north, or she ended up down here, if she ever came down here, that I'd ever get to like work with her in that aspect again. Like there's plenty of positives to it, but again, there's still, so the theater, I used to teach at a community theater in Georgia before the pandemic and everything. And they opened back up and just did newsies in person with a limited audience. And my kids were all the newsies. And I drove up there and saw them. And there was just something about being in the room again, being in the space, getting to enjoy that, moment of like watching them like light up and, feeling that energy that they have that's coming off the stage, which is just different. And I can speak for myself. I don't think, I'm grateful to be able to create whatever way that I can, just like you said, but my heart will always have that piece of it that feels that unless you're in the same room, breathing, like you said, Yvonne, breathing the same air and having that, like, that exchange with that audience, like that will always be missing until it's able to come back. Like it just will.
Yeah.
Well, I think that it works both ways, because yes, you want to see the performers in the audience breathing the same air, but when it's videoed or filmed or whatever, it's like, I watch Met Live, and that's great because I'm not in New York, I'm not at the opera, I'm not sitting there, but I am seeing and feeling, I'm seeing the interaction between the artist and the audience. The same thing, like if you had, the only way you could see a Broadway show was to see it filmed the way it's, but it's being filmed live.
Right.
That's great. but you're also seeing the show that is with the audience and the performers breathing the same air. So I don't think it's an either or. I think we need, you know, that you're always going to have that contact audience and performer, but to get some part of the enjoyment of the thrill, the education, the information, whatever, from whatever the performance is, it's great to be able to have, you know, Zoom theater, as Jackie calls it, you know, to be able to see it online, to be able to see it, you know, on, I have YouTube on my TV and watched something the other night, which was, it didn't even occur to us. My husband, he said, it's on YouTube. Why don't we watch it on TV? And we did. And it was like, oh my God, you know, we know these people, and it was on their YouTube channel, and there it was on the big screen TV, and it was like really cool. And we weren't there, but it was wonderful. So yeah, I don't think it's an either or, and you know, like labels don't really matter, but I don't think we should, you know, like be saying, oh, well, this is only for Zoom. You know, let's do both. Let's get in there and be personal, and let everybody else in the world see what it is like to see actors and audience together.
Thank you both, Ashley and Yvonne. Yeah, I agree with both of you. It's so next segment. What do you need to do Zoom theater? Well, you need some sort of device, a smartphone, a tablet, or a computer. Whether it's laptop or not, doesn't matter. Though it is harder to use Zoom on a tablet and a phone, as I've learned throughout these many months, because there you have access to fewer features on those than you do on a computer. And you need a Zoom account, of course. Now, with a Zoom account, there is a free Zoom account where you can do a play for 40 minutes at a time and have up to 100 people show up. And so you could do something live for 40 minutes, or you could record for 40 minutes and then upload it. And we'll talk about all of that later, about how it's not just things that you can do live with Zoom theater, but you can have way more people watch what you do in other ways. And so, yeah, of course, if you pay for a Zoom account, you have other features that can come with that account, such as doing Facebook Lives, YouTube Lives, etc. Do you have to have Zoom in order to do those things? Absolutely not. There are a lot of different sites. One of the most popular sites that have been used during these times is StreamYard, where from your Zoom account, you can go and pass it on to YouTube to make it a YouTube Live, or via Facebook, or probably some other platforms that I haven't tried out during these times. Any thoughts about that? Do you think there are other things that you need to do Zoom theater?
Jackie, I have a question. Are you going to have these links or the information, these, you know, what did you call it?
StreamYard.
StreamYard. Are you going to have that in like yesterday's stuff? And are they going to put it so that we can read it, or do I have to go get a piece of paper?
I have something written, though it's not a PowerPoint presentation. Or
don't
you
need
could write.
PowerPoint. Yeah, I'm easy. Just
Or
need
a
to know whether I
document.
need to be writing this down, or whether I'm going to be able to get this information without sending you an email and saying, what did you say the name of that was? Yeah.
So we put it in the chat, but we'll also Dara will like send out an email and stuff with different notes and things that we might need from the seminars today.
Yeah, and I have a Google Doc. It's so easy. I could just download it, give it to them, and they can share it with all of you. That's fine. Excellent. Any other thoughts or questions?
I know one thing for Zoom theater that I've noticed that, of course, is different than regular theater and something I think you need. You need a knowledge of like you said, Yvonne, that it's going to teach us different trades of like being on film. So if you have a little bit of filming knowledge, that kind of gives you just like a slight leg up when you're doing Zoom theater, because you know, okay, I know if I face this way, like what's that's going to look like. And, you know, if I'm doing the shot this way, you know, it definitely helps you to better stage, you know, the piece.
Absolutely. And a knowledge of your device is very important too. I mean, you have to know where the camera is. And that's not always, you know, we again take for granted that like, oh, it's going to be in the center. That's not true. For my iPhone 10, the camera is actually more towards the right. And so if I look center, I'm not actually looking at the camera. It's like I'm looking towards the left. And so knowing where that camera is and how to play to that camera and how to play to your angles is very important.
One thing I noticed in Zoom theater, coming from a stage background, is my vocal projections can destroy the mic. So like if I'm really emoting and like performing the way I would on a stage, then there was, you know, almost like a whole minute where my voice was too loud and it sort of like messed up the mic and the live audience missed a lot. And we had done a few rehearsals and I had tried to be aware of it, but it's just something, you know, that mic is going to pick you up differently. And like I have to like cut myself in half vocally in order to be able to perform on, you know, a tiny little Zoom platform. And the other thing I've noticed is that like the backgrounds or like the way, like if I accidentally move my laptop one way or if I shut it down during like a rehearsal or a break or something, then I have to put it back the exact same way or I'm not like staged the same way I was in the first frame. So it's a lot to try to like pick up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the next segment is sound. So we're definitely going to talk about that. And you're right. Zoom tends to prefer voices that are much lower, like mine, rather than people with higher pitches. And so if you want to scream or if you want to say something in a higher pitch, you have to be very, very careful because they may not pick it up. And the way that I've found to make it work is usually to start lower and then go higher. And Zoom usually allows that to happen. And so there are ways around that. It's just a question of playing and figuring out what works and what doesn't.
So Jackie,
Also,
oh, you want to go, Yvonne?
I was just going to say also what my coaches taught me, on-camera actor, put your arm out in front of you and only speak as loud as if you were speaking to someone who was that far away from you. You need to just speak lower. And we stage people, we tend to be trying to hit the back wall. I mean, because that's what we have to do in a theater. But just put your hand out in front of you and you shouldn't be speaking any louder than it and then where your arm is. So just
Absolutely
lower the volume. It's
So
just like you're talking to me or, you know, talking to someone that you're sitting next to or near.
Exactly.
So I know right now we're all in a mid-shot shot. How have you varied it up during your performances or done like stage combat to kind of like keep an audience engaged?
Okay. In terms of keeping an audience engaged, it again depends on what you're able to do. I think if you can incorporate movement, I mean, I try to do as much movement as possible within the confines of our Zoom. And I mean, I did a show recently with Silver Spring Stage that's still going on, where I had to move around. And what that means is I had to memorize the script and yeah, I moved around, I walked around back and forth, I sat, I got up, and you can do all of those things. You just, again, have to try it out and see what works. And in terms of also keeping the audience engaged, we try to use a lot of props. So I always try to tell people, hey, go ahead and bring different things. Bring a water bottle. Go ahead and brush your hair. The business of actually doing things is also interesting to an audience. And in terms of Zoom combat, I mean, we've used knives. If you have different either everyday items or some more specialized props like a sword, some people have those, we go ahead and we actually try to simulate a fight. And it's about the energy, you know, as long as you put the energy, yes, of course, there's no one in front of you, but it's still cool, especially if you go into different views, which we'll see in terms of gallery view versus speaker view. Some things are more realistic in certain views than others. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. So sound. What goes into the sound? Well, the little tiny things that you need to know is one, check to see that everyone is using the right microphone. Sometimes some devices have multiple microphones, and so you have to choose the right one, especially if you're using headphones, which some people prefer to do it, especially if there's ambient sounds in your space or outside of your space. Headphones tend to cancel those out. And then some little tricks in advanced, I always try to get people to check in their audio settings. So right next to the microphone, there's a little arrow and you can go to audio settings. It's the first one on the bottom. And there you can manipulate your sound a bit. And what do I mean by manipulate? For example, if other people can't hear you very well, I tend to tell people to increase their input volume, because input volume is what people hear. If you can't hear others very well, I tend to tell people to increase their output volume. And some shows require overlapping of speaking. And in order for that to happen, there's a little sound cue that says enable original sound. And once you check that, usually people are able to talk at the same time, especially if you have to argue and do things like that. Now, can you do this on a phone and an iPad? Actually, yes, you can. The difference is that when you sign on to Zoom, you're not able to access your audio settings. You have to do it prior to joining a Zoom room. So prior, you will see on your interface that there are several things such as audio settings, and you want to go there. And just like I told you how to do with a computer, with a laptop, you do that on your phone and your iPad. You can actually choose to enable original sound from your phone and your iPad or tablet, any tablet, not just iPads. There are also other really great advanced settings, but they only are important if you want to sing via Zoom, for example. Echo cancellation is really important. I usually check that so that, you know, there won't be an echo from me. Yeah, and that is sound. And like Yvonne already said, you know, knowing how to speak, like if you're yelling, please yell because that's your intention and not because you think this is theater and you want to project. There's no need to project. Any questions about that?
Not a question, but just if
Or thoughts?
anybody is fond of like Bluetooth headphones with microphones in them. I did a show and I had a bunch of problems with that. And one of the things that they told me to do was to go to my laptop settings and turn off permissions for the microphone for everything except for Zoom. And it actually improved the sound quality a lot. So if anybody like uses that a lot, that's a
And how do you turn off permissions?
So I have a Mac. So I go to
Okay.
that little Apple and I go to system preferences and then audio. And then it has like the little permission checkboxes and you have
Right.
to unlock it
Mhm.
and then just make sure that only Zoom has permission, and then you lock it again. I usually have to like sign out of Zoom and then sign back on, and
Mhm.
then you'll have a lot better audio.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. So I would guess for PC, it's also system preferences that you would have to go through. And yeah, I don't know anything after that because I have a Mac too.
Does anyone have thoughts about whether other performers should always be muted if they're not speaking? I mean, I feel like I've seen this done
Uh-huh.
opposite ways, and
Yeah.
I don't know. One time I wasn't muted, like I forgot to unmute myself because that was the trend. We were supposed to be muted if we
Mhm.
weren't speaking, and then like sounds like maybe in some of the shows you've done, everyone's just talking back and forth without sort of muting and unmuting themselves. What do you guys think?
I mean, for me, to be honest, and that's one of my way later points is no, I generally ask the audience to mute themselves and to turn off their videos during the duration of the performance. And afterwards, because I love talkbacks, afterwards, I ask them, I invite them to unmute themselves, turn on their videos, and come chat with everyone. But I have been a part of many different groups. That's how I learn and how I've developed my Zoom theater is not by doing it just myself, but by working with a lot of theaters and new groups out there. And so there are other groups where everyone is unmuted, everyone has their videos on, and they're just watching while people are performing. And they usually do a speaker view type. So speaker view means there's one video that's really highlighted, so one person at a time, and there's a band above of other videos, other people's videos. So you can see, depending on how big your screen is, 2 or 3 or 4 people watching you while you're performing.
I think the question I meant was like,
Mhm.
if there's more than one performer sort of on the stage, or like if there's like 3 or 4 people in the cast, like in the show.
Mhm.
I've seen it where the actor turns their camera off and unmutes if they're not sort of the one talking at that same time, but then they have to turn their camera and their sound back on as soon as they enter the stage again. And I'm just curious, that's what I was talking about, not audience.
I got you. In terms of the performers, I mean,
Yeah.
my rule of thumb is if you're in the scene, you should be on camera. If there are a lot of people who are in the scene and you're not really that important, you should stop your video. And in terms of muting, it all depends again on the sound around you. If you have some ambient sounds or you're afraid that you're going to make a sound that doesn't help in the performance, mute yourself. And if not, keep it unmuted until you have to say something. But yeah, those are my general rules of thumb. Entrances, start video, exits, stop video. Does that answer your question? Are you back?
Yes, thank you.
No, you're welcome. Excellent. Okay, next, virtual backgrounds. What do you need to make virtual backgrounds happen? So it is a fallacy that you need a green screen. Why is that a fallacy? Because it really, 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 really depends on your device. And the beauty is you can add backgrounds on your phone, on your tablet, and on your computer. So for example, for my Mac, it actually tends to work a lot better. I actually have a green screen, a full green screen now, but it works a lot better without me using the I have a green screen option for Zoom. And for me, what really makes it work is light. I need light. Natural light is best, but if you don't have natural light, having some sort of artificial light that's on you and the space around you really makes background work. Of course, with movement, it becomes tricky as well. And what really makes movement work is what kind of clothes you're wearing. And I find that really bright colors, especially white, beige, off-white colors, tend to work really, really well with Zoom and Zoom backgrounds and movement. So the more up-to-date your device, the better it will work. Green screen can help, of course, like I said, depending on your device. So if you have access to that, one thing that has been really great is I've seen green screens. When I first started Zoom Theater, green screens were extremely expensive. And now I see green screens for like $10, which is great because that means a lot more people have access, can get access to green screens. In terms of backgrounds, where do I get most of my backgrounds? My favorite sites are pexels.com and unsplash.com. They have the best backgrounds I've found on the internet. And to tweak them, I like to use Canva or Prisma. Canva is an application that you can use on your phone or on the internet, on your computer, and you can tweak it to put titles, to put all types of things. And so I'm gonna show you a couple of virtual backgrounds that I do, or that I have. For example, you can make a title page, which I've enjoyed doing a lot. You can also add cast lists. And you can do that also using PowerPoint with Google Docs, for example. And you can add all kinds of backgrounds. Be anywhere you want. Now, how do I appear and disappear? One thing that a lot of people have done is just to put their finger against their camera and then you disappear. Now, there's a much easier way. My way is I actually have a little thing that I've put against my camera. This device. And it costs $4 for 3. And so you put it over your camera and there's something that slides and you use the slider so that you can disappear from your screen. And I've really loved this feature because, wow, I can disappear from my screen. Any questions?
What is that called, your little device there?
I don't know what it's called, actually. I'll have to look it up. I bought it from Amazon. I'll look it up and let you know. So we're almost running out of time. So just wanted to go through things really quickly, and then if there are questions, I'll take those. Sharing things such as music and sound effects, videos, and PowerPoint presentations are also possible via Zoom, which I love. There's this big green screen that says share screen. And so with that, there's basic, advanced, usually are the 2 buttons that everyone have. Now they have also files as an option. And through that, you can add, some beautiful music, or you can add a video that you wanted to show. Like, for example, I can put this. And a lot of the times, this is the best way to share music and also still be able to talk. Because if you just share it through your device, there can be some fight with the Zoom audio. Music, where do I find music? I usually love royalty-free music. So YouTube and Spotify are awesome resources. They have a ton of free music. You should take advantage of that. Same for sound cues. YouTube actually has a lot of free, royalty-free sound cues. Now you can also use other types of sound cues that aren't royalty-free. You just need to credit the people. So I also use soundbible.com and zapsplat.com. In terms of acting on Zoom, I usually have people, when they come, do introductions like we did, name, place in the world, and a fun question, just so that, again, it can break the ice and we can get to know people a little bit better. Everyone has a different style and process. I like to be as collaborative as possible. That's not always the case. Sometimes there's a director for a project, right? They have a vision and you follow the director. I don't tend to do that too much, but sometimes I do. And then I try as best to make it a safe space and comfortable for everyone. I generally tend to tell people that if there's a problem, to feel free to come to me and to let me know, and so that we can see how best to handle the situation. If you don't want to work with a certain person, or if some person acted in a way that was inappropriate, right? To just communicate it with me as best as possible. Same for constructive feedback. I love it when everyone gives each other constructive feedback so that we can grow as artists. All I ask is that if you think it's going to be harsh, just let me know. Tell me what the feedback is going to be, and I'll try to say it instead, in lieu. And yes, I tend to do 2 rehearsals when I do weekly shows, just because the first rehearsal is the rehearsal to play, to make crazy choices and see if it works. And the second is to solidify and be like, okay, no, this is the choice we're making, period, for the performance. I have worked on shows that have a way longer process, like several weeks or several months of rehearsals. It just depends on what you want. But I found that having 2 rehearsals, even just 2, can be enough to have a quality show. And then the last few things are changing your names via Zoom. You can do it again on all types of device. The easiest way, usually, if you're on a phone, if you just tap and you should see like 3 little dots, you check there and it says you can change your name. You can also do that on a computer just by going to participants. And when you go to participants, you should see names, and you can go to your name. You'll see mute or more. You click on more, you'll see rename, and then you can name yourself whatever your character is. And voila. There's so much more to say, so much more to learn, but this is a good snippet of what is Zoom theater.